currently experiencing a societal epidemic without a vaccine: loneliness. Society defines normalcy and success as being in a romantic relationship. This metric excludes many people. Connection is a feeling of being part of something greater, awe from seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary, gaining new insight into our true selves, and acknowledging the humanity of others through impromptu conversation, a smile, and eye contact. Connection to our true selves is within our control. Nature is always open, and we can choose to reach out to others. Consciously reframing February's goal as one of connection allows for inclusion rather than exclusion. We can achieve this by shifting from February's traditional message of our worth being validated by gestures of love bestowed upon us by others into a celebration of connection, accessible and attainable to all. Connection to true self. I moved to Cedarburg, the community of my heart, over 4 years ago. I've given Cedarburg that moniker because of the peace it brought me as my external and internal worlds were turned upside down. In my journey from simply existing to living authentically, I employed gratitude and spiritual practices to connect to my true self. In my previous life, expressions of gratitude felt unnatural. Resentment and jealousy were my go-to emotions. I framed life as happening to me rather than for me. My mindset was too narrow to see the beauty in life's blessings. In my new life, gratitude has become a daily practice versus an obligatory annual one. I give thanks for the tangible and intangible attributes of my life. I consciously slow down to counter the challenging world climate that moves too fast and hyper-focuses on the negative. I name and appreciate the small things that make my life wonderful: morning coffee, a body that works, human connection, and stars illuminating the darkness. Living by my trifecta of awesome action, best intention, trust the process allows me to relinquish perceived control and become awakened to seeing the positives, resulting in a heightened state of gratitude. Releasing perceived control of external events allows for awe as things play out the way they're meant to. In hindsight, the dots are connected. Embracing the credo that life happens for me rather than to me allows me to accept that even when an outcome isn't what I had anticipated or hoped for, it doesn't mean it was a failure. If we view life as a game, the token we represent ourselves with is everything. While Monopoly has markers such as the top hat, car, and shoe to choose from, the actual game of life affords different tokens. The parent token, family of origin past self token, the significant other token, the outer shell token, and finally, the true self token. Contemplating our choice of token causes us to reevaluate our current relationships. Do they align with our true selves? Can they be reinvented, or do they need to be compassionately released? Life moves quickly and often on autopilot. To connect with our true selves, we must pause to assess our current strategy and make adjustments to resume play with the true self token. Being curious about your child's self and reparenting her, him, them is another effective way to connect to your true self. Taking time to reflect on your childhood, what was successful and what could have been handled differently, can help you gain insight into achieving your most authentic self in the present. Imagine viewing things from the perspective that you are now in charge of parenting your past child self. How would you have comforted, redirected, and inspired your child's self? Can you incorporate those ideas into your current self-coaching? Determine if you're currently processing events through the lens of your past child self instead of your present self. By reintegrating your childhood self into your present self, you can see and react to situations as they are, not as they were. Getting rid of old stories and narratives that no longer serve allows for greater clarity and contentment. The humility of blessings allows us to connect to our true selves. Blessings are different from blessings. Blessings involve reframing events perceived at the time to be negative into something beneficial. When we adopt the mindset of blessings, adverse circumstances transform into the adaptive building blocks of who and where we are today. We rewrite our narratives, revealing a sense of fortitude. We move from a place of navigating life through the rearview mirror to focusing instead on the horizon in front of us. Understanding and accepting that we did the best we could with what we had allows for self-compassion. When we achieve self-compassion, we can then extend the same to others, increasing feelings of connection. Reframing previously negative viewed life occurrences as having served us sets the stage for positive forward growth. We become empowered to thrive rather than merely survive challenging circumstances. We gain a new awareness and acceptance of our true selves. This self-actualization allows us to attract and keep the right people and relationships. Attempting to tailor your old life to fit your new one is an exercise in futility. Over the last 4 years, I have tried unsuccessfully multiple times to have wardrobe items from my previous life altered to fit me in my new one. Blessing. This situation reminded me that I needed to address my scarcity fears and have faith in having sufficient financial abundance to replace clothing items. That clothing was a literal and metaphorical reminder to let go of things from my past life that no longer serve me. By developing a strong connection with the true self, we can embrace responsibility for caring for our mental, emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual well-being. Romantic relationships are not the means of imparting in us a sense of enoughness. That's our job. How would you react if you saw a dating ad with someone stating they expected their partner to be responsible for their mental, emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual well-being? While walking recently, I saw a Valentine's Day sign stating, "Be mine." That sign showcased the traditional February metric of success, being claimed by another. If we don't belong to another, does that diminish who we are? Do we accept the designation of being claimed by another as the golden standard of societal worthiness? One of the most brutal truths I've had to accept is that our only forever relationship is with ourselves. Embracing connection with true self involves reframing solitude as being with yourself rather than by yourself. Being comfortable and connected to our true selves allows us to stay in the right relationships with the right people at the right time. Being able to depend on oneself prevents attachments to others out of desperation. When we embrace responsibility for knowing and caring for our true selves, external relationships transition from dependence to enrichment. Connection to nature. A meaningful way to gain a sense of connection is through a most gentle and wise sensei, nature. Amid global uncertainty, nature's cycles remind us there is still order. We are reassured that this too shall pass as we in nature experience ups and downs. The harshness of winter has its season. Deciduous trees experience the loss of their leaves, only to have new ones emerge next spring. The sun sets, leaving us temporarily in darkness, rising again the next day. We are reminded that ultimate control is an illusion. Nature regulates itself. Life happens around us. Things within our control are limited, but we can control our reactions. During the unsettling chaos of the COVID lockdown, nature was one of the few things that remained open. When people started coming back together, they did so by gathering outside. When we quiet our minds and immerse ourselves in the present, nature instills a feeling of awe and serenity. We can gain a feeling of reassurance by observing nature's grace in dealing with the inevitability of change. A state of quietude achieved by being off of our phones and even without human companionship allows us to notice things those distractions may have prevented. Last fall, I paused to reflect on the lessons of changing fall foliage. Some trees completely changed color. Takeaway: sometimes change occurs all at once in an obvious manner. Some trees only partially changed, resulting in some leaves remaining unchanged while surrounded by others who had transformed. Takeaway: change isn't dependent on our surroundings or others taking the same action. Some trees appeared unchanged, but on closer examination, individual leaves showed unique patterns of change. Takeaway: sometimes change can occur quietly and not be readily apparent, but it has nevertheless taken place. Human behavior mirrors that of the trees. Change is not an all or nothing thing. Sometimes we just need to look more closely to see it. Change can be boldly noticeable or quietly unassuming. Prominent displays of change include career and relationship transitions, moving, loss of loved ones, serious illness, and spiritual quests. Quieter displays of change can include adopting healthier lifestyle choices and curbing social media use. Some leaves, even when surrounded by neighbors resistant to change, made the bold and unilateral decision to transform themselves. If individual leaves dare to express themselves authentically in a setting where doing so isn't the norm, shouldn't we extend similar compassion to ourselves? What holds us back from making change is fear. Fear encourages us to remain in our comfort zones. Fear compels us to freeze and cling to the perceived safety of the familiar. Discovering and acting from a place of true self serves as the antidote. Connection to others. The most profound influence on my life over the past 5 years was the song Underdog by Alicia Keys. Underdog was released in January 2020, shortly before the world entered COVID lockdown. At that same time, I knew I needed to admit the reason and season of my marriage had ended. As COVID and divorce threatened to dissolve connection in my inner and outer worlds, Underdog motivated me to reconnect to myself, nature, and others. Here is the chorus that forever changed my worldview. One conversation, a simple moment, the things that change us if we notice when we look up sometimes. Looking up physically from our phones and AirPods. Looking up from our absorption with ourselves. Looking up to see beauty in plain sight. Looking up to see humanity in others. The first time I saw the video, I was struck by the humility of the heroine. We are led through the song through her eyes, those of a compassionate story here. Despite her challenges, she gave so generously of herself. Her priceless gifts of compassion and curiosity benefited the recipients by acknowledging their humanity. All of us can choose to make an impact in the same way. Although the world can feel dark, we can choose to be a source of light. Bearing witness to what transpires around us can feel overwhelming and disheartening. While many things at the macro level are beyond our control, we control our reactions and intentions. We can affect things positively on a micro level by treating others with kindness, compassion, and curiosity. Impromptu encounters are a simple way to make a positive impact. Ask people how they are and mean it. By doing this, we acknowledge their humanity and show them they have been seen. The spirit of kindness gets passed on. When you touch someone's heart, they may go on to pay it forward, and so on and so on. A key to connecting with others is moving from a place of judgment to one of curiosity. When we accept ourselves, we can then show compassion for others. We don't have to embrace everything about them, but we can choose to honor their humanity. Simple acts transcending a myriad of differences include saying hello, allowing someone to merge into traffic, holding open a door, and treating essential workers as human beings rather than a means to an end. Viewing other people as enrichment while taking ownership of our contentment allows us to engage others bravely. Relationships with others are delineated by reason, season, or lifetime. 2/3 of those categories imply impermanence. Let me say that again. 2/3 of those categories imply impermanence. The only guaranteed permanent relationship we have is with ourselves. Endings are not a sign of failure. In 2/3 of situations, they are natural. We can move forward with gratitude for the lessons and gifts received without anger, sadness, or regret. We attract healthier relationships by developing ease and comfort with our true selves. Our relationships cease being defined by validation achieved through codependency. We attract people who are in line with our values. We are never alone. We are with ourselves. Impromptu everyday encounters can bring a wonderful sense of connection to our lives. We can make a deliberate choice to be open to making connections anywhere. Casual encounters can lighten our hearts and provide a sense of community. The humble effort of sharing gratitude and acknowledging the humanity of others can result in those acts being paid forward and touching many others. After moving alone to a new city during the COVID lockdown, the neighborhood friends I met increased my feelings of belonging and connection. By reaching out and starting conversations with the people I encountered on my daily walks, I had the pleasure and privilege of building a sense of community and holding space for their beautiful stories. I'd love to share some of the beautiful connections that I've made. I met a man mourning the loss of his wife during COVID. Why? I met him while he was on his front porch observing a car show in the park across the street. He opened his heart to me and told me he was grieving the loss of his wife. He then dashed into his home and brought out photos of her to share with me. Y has become a dear neighborhood friend with whom I enjoy chatting. I met the owner of a magical house who shares a similar life outlook, C. When I first moved to Cedarburg, I walked past a gorgeous vintage home with ethereal sounding wind chimes. I dubbed it the Nirvana house because it always made me feel calm and happy. I saw C outside one day, a mug of coffee in her hands and a Toto-esque dog at her feet. I initiated a conversation about how much I loved her home and that it brought me peace. I learned that her birthday is the same day my beloved grandmother and namesake transitioned. I met two fierce women who taught me aging can be done with grace and fortitude. M. I live across from an assisted living facility and regularly observed a woman power walking on the sidewalk surrounding the building. One day I approached her and initiated a conversation. The aide who was with her told her to tell me how old she was. M told me that she is in her 90s. I told her that she is an inspiration and she humbly accepted the compliment. R. I met her on a walk when I observed her dog, walking solo down a flight of stairs, R trailing behind at her own pace. I started future conversations by asking how her self-walking dog was doing. When I saw her after a bout with COVID, she struggled to keep up with her dog on walks, needing to go slow and sit down. Her grit got her through, and she completely recovered. Because I went out of my way to initiate a connection with these wonderful souls, I feel like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life when he sees Violet Blick at the film's end, announces that he knows her, and solidifies his connection with the community. In today's conversation, I reframe February as a month of celebrating connection versus simply romantic love. This act of reimagining causes a positive shift in mindset. We explored how connection is possible for everyone via true self, nature, and engaging others. We discussed how seeing ourselves as being with ourselves rather than by ourselves is key to creating meaningful connections. We discovered how coming from a place of wholeness allows us to focus our attention and curiosity on others rather than internal ruminations of lack. I hope you will use the remaining 5 days of February to celebrate your connection to self, others, and nature by implementing what we covered today.
Not only taking the risk to put your hand out to people, strangers, and make a connection, but to me, the spirituality of community is part of what we do here, that it is life-affirming, and so this church brings this to me.
Thank you for sharing.
One word, lessons. Love it.
I can't take credit for that word, and I won't take credit for it, but it resonated with me. And part of my last 5 years was reframing things. And one of the things that really helped me to reframe my worldview was coming into understanding that we can re-regulate and reset our nervous systems. And how we frame things and perceive things is just absolutely key. And lessons and being able to pull something positive is key. Thank you for sharing.
Catherine, I want to thank you for sharing what you've learned in the last 5 years with us.
Thank you. Well, it's been my pleasure, and I am so grateful to be welcomed into the congregation today to share these words. As I've told many people today, this has been a year in the waiting. I signed on last year, and I've been so excited, and I'm just grateful to have had the opportunity to share my thoughts with you all today. Thank you very much.